Hello, Julian. Thank you so much for being part of this project, the Strategist Revival, that is about myself and the audience to revive and think about the past, present, and future of strategy. How you doing?
Very well, very well. I'm excited to talk about it too. It's a good topic.
I remember a lot about you being head of comms at BBDO, but tell us about your career, if possible.
Yeah, so I started my career in Australia in an agency called Naked Communications, which was a comms planning agency, which was quite different for the time because it kind of sat between media and creative agencies. And in the Australian market, they're kind of separated out. And so this was a really revolutionary thing at the time, and they got on some big clients like Coca-Cola and did some really great work. So I started there, which was very foundational to my experience. Moved to America, was went to BBH over there in New York, got all the way up to head of communications planning there, and then moved to BBDO. So they're the kind of big agency moves I made. And then after that, I was a strategy consultant to brands like Apple, um, Disney, Uber, and have now started the strategy finishing school.
And I'm on the current moment studying on the strategy finishing school, so I can remember things and learn new things because learning for me is learning for life. And after my accident, the traumatic brain injury, I want to remember the things. And this is a question for you. What has been different from the past and today and the future in terms of building a strategy? Let's start with the past. What has been still working from, let's say, the 50 years old recently, the one from JWT, I forgot the name of the author, but he wrote about the strategy, how to do, da, da, da. What's still working on that sense?
Stephen King wrote the JWT Guide to Planning, and I think the fundamentals of planning have not changed. So they are that you are fundamentally trying to get to a goal with limited resources that you have, and you're trying to identify the problem and work a way around that problem. And so I think that is still the key to strategy. Those three pieces of understanding the business goal and the consumer goal, understanding the problem between the consumer and business are both facing, and then an insight or a revelation or a way around that problem that people hadn't thought of. That's the fundamentals of strategy, and I don't think that's changed. The finite resources, limited resources, that gets more into planning of like, okay, well, now that we know that that's the plan, how can we execute that with the staff that we've got or the money and budget that we've got? And I think that has not changed for 1960 they wrote it, but I would say that that definition of strategy goes back to who knows who the godfathers of strategy are. Is it the Greeks? Probably the Greeks. So yeah.
And in terms of practical things like the creative brief and other examples, I know that you are given a class today on creative brief. And about that, what has changed, from the creative brief from 5 years ago that I was working at Meta and I was not in an agency. I was in an agency. I was so interesting that Meta has hired me, but now I want to learn again about how is it to be on an agency and to learn from experts like you about the strategy, the planning. So what is different from the creative brief from the past to today?
Uh, Honestly, if it's the last 5 years, I haven't seen the evolution because I've been out of agencies for 5 years. I think the thing that I've got a good handle on is I feel like I've got my finger on the pulse because there's over 4,000 strategists in the strategy finishing school. So I might not be having it personally, but I can see it remote, kind of through the students and the questions coming through. I think the biggest change that we're seeing is the impact of remote working and hybrid working, where we took a lot of things for granted when we're in an office with creatives. The whole pre-briefing where you're going and having an informal conversation with the creative director, ensuring that you're aligned. So much harder now with a remote work team where you can't have those meetings, or they feel a little bit more official when you wanted to take an idea and wanted to make it feel more of a collaborative process. You might sketch it on a piece of paper, where now it's got to be in a digital format. You're like looking at a Google Deck or a Word doc. So we've got to come up with new solutions to those problems. And I think the way we communicate that has been the biggest change for me.
And what about the four C's, the culture, the company, the consumer, the category? Has it changed somehow? Because in the past, when I was working on agency, I was looking for all of those, but a consumer insight was the thing that I was writing on the deck, just the
Yeah.
consumer insight.
I still think that's the case. I think we probably have gone through what I'd call the hype cycle of brand purpose. I think brand purpose is kind of like dying off a little bit more, where I think brands were a little bit more altruistic. They thought that that's what they had to be. I kind of feel like there's just a little bit of a pullback on that and more getting grounded into the category that they're in. So that would be what I'm saying. In terms of 4Cs, it depends who uses it and how they use it. So 4Cs for me was a document that I would use as a research tool. I wouldn't use it as a final output to a client. Where other agencies, when I was working, I know Droga used 4Cs as that would be how they'd present their strategy to a client. I never used it that way. So I think it depends agency to agency on their relationship with the 4Cs and how they use it.
And how to grab those insights? What do you usually recommend? On desk research or quantitative research? How to grab those insights? Interviews?
Yeah, so it really depends on the two things. Back to the definition of strategy is like we're dealing with limited resources. So understanding what resources you have. Do you have a marketing research budget? Well, if you've got a marketing research budget and you've got time, then it's the best thing we could do is go out and interview people and talk to people and do our own quantitative research and run our own surveys and panels. But if you're under the crunch, you don't have enough time or you don't have any money, then that's not going to be available to you. So I think in the ideal world, we're always doing qual and quant research with consumers who are in and out of our, current buyers and really understanding them. And we've got a lot of time. But the realities of today is no one's got that luxury. So you've got to kind of come down a little bit of how you can do your research. So for a lot of people, that might just be desk research. It might be 24, 48 hours, bang something out really fast. What can I find online? What can I find that the client's already got? What marketing research have they got? Could I show a different angle to that? How do I use AI? Is there something that could force just some thoughts or insights that I could start testing?
What about the tools of Google, Meta, the Google Insights, Meta Insights, the TikTok? Are they also useful for that?
Probably. I don't use them myself, but I'm sure they would be. I think when we break down what the definition of an insight is, it's a revelation that makes you look at the problem in a new way. Now, if I go to TikTok, I'm often seeing insights on that platform of people making me think in new ways. So definitely, I think I could watch TikTok and I could come across something that makes me think about the product or brand or really the product or brand problem in a new way. And we've got case studies of that. Like the Heinz work, I think came from a Snapchat or a TikTok that one of maybe it's the strategist or the creative saw. And that was that whole Heinz, it has to be Heinz, where they're pouring the Heinz sauce from fake bottles, generic sauce brand into a Heinz bottle. And that those out of home ads, amazing. Everyone loved them. Thought they came from, like a deep immersive consumer in the field research. No, it came from a Snapchat. So I think those tools have a place. You just need to work out how to use them in your toolkit.
You mentioned about watching the TikTok and things. What about the creators? How, for example, to think about creators from a strategist perspective when you are thinking about not only the creative brief, but building a strategy for that brand? What do you do on that terms? Do you just check as a benchmark or how to do it? How to use the creators? Are you brief the creatives talking about that creator, that behavior?
I think there's two areas that I'd be using creators in. So one is obviously what we've just been talking about is are they uncovering an insight? Because that's often if we look at comedians, if we think, there's a lot of creators online, and especially if we look at audiences like in Gen Z, or right now, I'm really interested in corporate culture. There are so many comedians that are talking about corporate culture. And so there's a lot of insights in their jokes about working in corporate. There are insights laying there. So that's one area. So are they revealing a new way to look at the problem that everyone's facing? Um, or the other way is at the very end of the process, is this someone who can help get this message across? So once we know our creative idea and our idea platform, is this someone who aligns with that idea, who can help spread that message? So they're the two ways I think I look at creators at the moment.
And talking about the new things that might change the way that we work as strategist planners, what are the impact of AI? What's the impact of AI in terms of building it, the tactical, the practical things, but also in terms of strategy of how to talk about this brand using AI?
I think it's the same to me. I see it as like the same as when Google came along. Like this is an amazing tool for research. You've got someone who can succinctly put all this research in one place for you. And I use ChatGPT daily on totally a lot of things, from like just understanding what my doctor's saying to me to, the last request I think I was looking at what my personal trainer would recommend foods I eat and not eat. He was saying, "Oh, look at Google." And instead of going to Google, I go to ChatGPT now. Uh, I think ChatGPT, again, helps at the very beginning and the end of the process. So for me, with ChatGPT, I'm using it to give me ideas of hypotheses that I want to go and test around problems and potentially insights. I've been able to push it to give insights. I definitely don't use it in the middle of the process, which is testing those ideas, because I don't think that that's how it should be used. But then at the end of the strategy process, where you've got your idea, you've got your strategy on a page, being able to use ChatGPT to give you some options of different ways to write something, so helpful. And I think the strategists who embrace AI and these new tools are going to be the ones that really are given that advantage and that edge, because I think a lot of strategists, especially when it first came out, I saw a lot of people kind of knocking it and saying, "Oh no, this isn't helpful," and they were really just pushing it in very simple ways, rudimentary ways of like, "Hey, ask and give me an insight about Coca-Cola," and it's like generic trash that it comes back with. But that's very like level one thinking of how to use ChatGPT. So I think if you're open to new technology and new ways of working, I think it's going to provide a massive opportunity for people.
Gabriel here from Brazil, he just mentioned that you need to treat ChatGPT as a partner of a colleague from the agency that you work for, like not just asking what's the insight, but giving the prompt and the context and things and checking the point of view and then giving your point of view.
Yeah, I think it's like having a junior strategist on your team who the junior strategist who you can train up. That's how I look at it too.
And what about thinking about the future, a subject that I'm really connected to and really study and I want to learn more is about sustainable marketing. So what about that? The sustainability during the strategies process, how do we look for that? I was thinking about the culture insight, but what else could the strategists build in terms of helping the clients to think more about diversity, equity, and inclusion in advertising, to think about the sustainable marketing, avoid greenwashing, this kind of thing?
Think it's going to be a problem that marketers and planners continue to face, because it's often not aligned to commercial value. Profit is at the end of the day, the CEO is answerable to the shareholders, and they are the ones who are going to drive decisions. And so unless you can show the impact that it has on the bottom line of like, how is this going to impact the amount of sales we get? If we don't do this, then I don't think I don't think you have much sway. So you've got to hope that the consumer and kind of cultural undercurrents stay strong, because I don't see planners leading it as much as I see them making making marketers aware that this is going to be a problem for them. Because if it's not a problem with increasing their profit, I don't think it's going to be a problem they're going to take seriously.
Yeah, what should I hope it is a problem so we can work more on that for the client. I mean, what we see is that the population is looking more for that, but how to make them look for that is something that the client will bring when they think about that on the briefs that they share with us from agencies. And what about the skills of a strategist? What do you think are the skills today for a strategist, and how do you see the strategists? Like myself, I was hired by Meta, but there are different companies hiring strategists to work inside of the company, holding houses. What do you think about that?
It's a growing trend. And I think the thing is being able to show the value of that role and how you make the product better has been the challenge for agency strategists and in-house strategists together. And so being able to show that value throughout the organization is really important. I think the other thing about that is also understanding the soft skills side of it. So understanding how to navigate office politics, to me, is kind of a big part of the job. It's 50% of the job. So understanding change before it happens is really important. Understanding who actually are the decision makers in the room, understanding the hidden dynamics, the unspoken rules of how decisions get made in every organization is really important for strategists. Because I think we might get a bit of coverage within agencies, but as you move out into in-house studios, you may not have as much coverage, and you may need to be a little bit more politically savvy on who you align with, how your alliances work, where you're kind of working within the organization. So I think being good at diplomacy is really important. Your social skills that's the thing that's going to help you either cut it or not. And I think that works for all strategists at all levels, like or employees at all levels. It's that skill that really sets you apart and puts you into more senior leadership roles. And something that we don't think about when we get into strategy. I think when we think about strategy to begin with, maybe we think, oh, this is awesome. It's all going to be about the research and the frameworks, and just I'm going to come up with some amazing ideas and some amazing insights, and that's going to win clients over, or that's going to win the team over. It's not. That's not how life works. It's not pretty, beautiful butterflies and rainbows. That's not reality. That's not reality we live in. Office dynamics and the politics that are at play are as important as your actual work.
But the frameworks helped a lot. Your frameworks that I have on the strategy finishing school, they help me a lot.
Yeah, they definitely do, because what they're doing is, at least this is what I think, is that the frameworks help to show value. They help to show value. The problem with a lot of strategists is they're hidden. People don't know what it means. Like, you ask anyone in the street, what does strategy mean? They understand it as a general concept, but then when it actually comes to the reality, they're like, I actually don't know. And if someone's got that in their role, I don't know what they do. So what the frameworks do is say, it's not me as a person. I'm not a strategist. This is the outputs. These are the outputs that I deliver as a strategist. This is what strategy is. This is what you're buying, these products, which are the frameworks and the information and the smart thinking that goes in the frameworks, so that then people know what to ask for next time and why you need to be in the meeting. Otherwise, I've seen it happen too many times. If they've got a smart person in the room, an agency has an amazing strategist, everyone loves them. They're like, we want more of this. Let's hire another strategist. Next strategist comes in. They don't have that same charisma and can engage the audience. They're like, well, who's this other person? They're not a strategist. They're no good. And then they cut that person and then they just want the one person again. And the problem there is that they're thinking about the individual, not the outputs. And so that's why I've been so heavily focused on frameworks, because that is the way you scale and build a strategy department.
Perfect, my friends. And we are finishing the talk today. I would love to be 3 hours more with you. But before we go, which advice would you give for the strategists about the past, the present, and the future? They are going to watch us, especially the Brazilian ones. Which advice would you give for them?
Do you know what? It's actually really interesting because I talk about past, present, future in terms of the skills of a strategist. Strategic thinking requires you to think in the past, which is all about looking at what happened in the past and analyzing, and the side of your brain that's the analytical side that can kind of build an argument with data. The future side is coming up with the solution, the single-minded proposition, which is like an idea of how we're going to solve the problem, the way forward. And then the present is building a plan of like, okay, with the resources that we have around us right now, how can we actually execute this strategy? And a strategic thinker, to me, is strong in all three parts. And often we lean towards one part of that. Often we might feel, oh, I feel really comfortable around the analytics, or I feel really comfortable putting a plan together and dates and times and blah, blah, blah. Or I'm just an ideas person. I love coming up with the big ideas. But a great strategist will have all three parts together. They'll be able to complement all of those three parts. And you need that because as you go to speak to senior leaders and other people in the organization, they're going to lean to one part of that strategy, and that might not be your strong suit. So if you're the ideas person and then person comes along and goes, where's the data point for that? Well, they're past thinkers. Or they go, but how are we going to make that a reality? They're present thinkers. So if you don't have those three boxes ticked off, then you're not going to get very far through the decision chain.
Thank you so much, Julian. Thank you so much for having the time and giving this opportunity to have this chat with you. I would have it anyhow, but then I thought, what about recording it and sharing with the strategists from my region? And I
Excellent.
hope great for them as well as it has been for me.
Love it. Glad we could have it.